Twin Cities Con returns to the Minneapolis Convention Center for the fourth year, November 8th through 10th. Twin Cities Con is a celebration of comics, toys, TV, film, art, cosplay, games, and all things nerdy. There is nothing like Twin Cities Con. It's also a family-friendly event where you can meet your favorite celebrities, browse the vendor hall and artist alley for the coolest merch, watch celebrity Q&As, and even more. Twin Cities Con is bigger and better than ever before. Come see from Star Wars the Emperor himself, Ian McDiarmid, along with Anakin Skywalker, Hayden Christensen, John DiMaggio, who is Bender from Futurama, WWE Hall of Fame wrestler Sting, and Sunday only Grant Gustin from The Flash and Glee, plus more guests to be announced. 3 days of action-packed fun is in the heart of Minneapolis at the Minneapolis Convention Center. Tickets start at $40. Kids tickets are just $8 for the entire weekend. VIP tickets also available, including a 3-day weekend pass, plus some really cool VIP perks. Buy your tickets and get more information at TwinCitiesCon.com.
The views expressed and the opinions given by the individual host, guest, random reptoid, or chupacabra may not necessarily reflect those of AM 950 Radio, its affiliates, or its sponsors. Now, it's time to step into the unknown. There are things people experience but never talk about. A shadow moving in the corner, flickering of the lights, a disembodied voice. We invite you to talk with us. Share your story, share your experience. Because this isn't just your story, this is our story. This is GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakken.
And this is GhostBox Radio on AM 950, where every night we talk about the paranormal, ufology, Bigfoot, and so much more. My name is Greg Bakken. Thank you very much for joining us on this November 6th. We have in the studio with us, we have Adam. We'll be checking in with him in a bit. But I do want to get things moving here. I'm excited. I would like to move away from just politics in general, regardless of whatever side you're on. Let's just take a break from it for a second. And I'm really excited about this because a couple months back, I covered for Matt McNeil. And one of the folks I wanted to bring on was Randy West. Randy has had such a career working in television and working with game shows, but also beyond that, writing about it, living it, really being a part of it. If you ever have the opportunity, and I'll put this up in a bit, his Facebook page, the Randy West Appreciation page, such a great insight into what's going on in Hollywood right now. But Randy has also worked with, maybe some names that you may not have heard of, like Bob Barker, right? Dick Clark, Wink Martindale, Chuck Woolery, Ray Combs. I mean, these such amazing people. And what we're going to be talking about with Randy today is we're going to talk about his book, TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies, the backstage blunders, bloopers, and blasphemy of celebrities in search of success. Let's just get right to it. And Randy, welcome to GhostBox Radio.
Hey, Greg, pleasure to be with you.
And here's the thing. I mean, I suppose, it kind of, was there a point when you're hearing the opening of my show and you're just like, and I'm on here for what reason?
Well, I thought you wanted me to do something like,
I did, and I'm glad. I'm glad. Well, and is that free? By the way, we really okay.
No charge.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Also, God forbid the time that you might pass, we're going to bring you back at that point as well. That's just kind of
that'll be great. Something to look forward to.
So if you can, I don't know if I have to book through an agent for that or not, but we'll figure it out. It's okay.
Christmas from the crypt. That'll be fun.
So over the last couple days, things have changed over the last couple days. So I have a very serious question to start off with that's been on my mind, Randy. And I feel like that you could help answer this. Because of the last couple of days, there's been some changes. And, and that change is between October and November here. Do you think it's too early to start holiday music on November 1st?
Wow. No, it's fine to start music immediately as long as you're not going to play All I Want for Christmas Is You. Other than that, all holiday music is acceptable and welcome.
There are other songs than that?
Yeah, we forgot him. There's Little Drummer Boy and that's about it.
You know what, as I have to admit, and I'm going to admit this on the air, this is a safe place, okay? I actually like that song. I really do. And I don't mean Little Drummer Boy.
It's really so wonderfully overproduced. It feels like it's cotton candy, audio cotton candy, and it feels a lot like Phil Spector kind of produced it.
It does, and it's like a 21st century pop song that was meant to sound like the 80s in a way too. I also feel like you said, there's just an immersion of sound with it, and I hear Adam humming and singing it beyond the holiday season, so he's.
Oh, well, they have medication for that these days.
They do. Well,
they need to up it.
Yeah.
So I don't even know where to start, but I'm going to start where I want to. Because we're going to talk about the book here in a second. But once again, over on Facebook, the Randy West appreciation page, a lot of interesting stuff there. I noticed that you had been doing tours over at what we used to call CBS Television City. I don't know if it's even called that anymore. And I was just curious, is that something that's just like a special Randy West VIP thing, or is that something you're working in conjunction with? I'm just curious because, let's put it this way, I want a tour of Television City.
Who wouldn't? Because it's a fantastic factory. It's the first factory for mass producing television entertainment. Back when television was brand new, when they broke ground for CBS Television City, fewer than 1% of households had televisions. And by the time it opened in 1952, well, there were about 34% of households had television. So it was very modernistic. It was very forward-looking. There was no color. There was no videotape. There was no way to get a television show from one coast to the other. There were no satellites. There were no coaxial cable. So it was futuristic in its design. And how I came involved was the new owners. It was sold about 6 years ago. The new owners came in, and they were running their plans for the future of the studio past some industry folks. And I went down to see the little model, the little, Tinker Toy kind of, this is what it's going to look like thing. And it was like, other people are concerned about, well, these tall buildings, that's too much office space, going to create too much traffic. And all I'm looking at is the 4 studios where we have spent our lives viewing the magic. Yes. In other words, let's talk about The Price is Right. We're talking about the Smothers Brothers, Jack Benny, Danny Kaye,
All in the Family,
Bill Maher. I'm name dropping now. Bold and Beautiful, Young and the Restless, Playhouse 90. I'm skipping over 70 different years of great television.
Yep.
These Burnett. 4 studios is where they all that came from, and they were going to screw with them, if you use the vernacular.
Right.
They were going to, change them around a little bit and combine them and raise the roof and all. I'm like, wait a minute. There's such legacy here. Besides this, it won cultural landmark status, so I don't know how you found a way to modify them, but it's certainly not the spirit of the landmark status. And I started to shoot off my mouth and talked about the history of it and how there are thousands of technicians and stars and folks who gave their heart and soul to these television programs. And I said, I'll bring a couple of hundred down here. We'll have a rally, and you'll be very sorry that you're going to move any walls. And as I was giving them the history, long story short, they said, wow, I mean, we know these shows, but I had no idea about the breadth and depth and width of it all. And long story short, it ended with me being asked to give tours to their VIP guests.
And do I count as a VIP guest?
We can squeeze you in. If you get to L.A., I'll take you the rest of the way into the tour.
I'd make it my business. And the thing about what is it officially called now? Because it's not called CBS Television City anymore, is it?
When they sold it for, I think it was $750 million, they bought, along with the property, 25 acres, they bought the name Television City. Mm-hmm. So it's not CBS Television City, it's Television City Studios.
Got it. I mean,
and the history that I talk about is phenomenal. It's blowing people away, and it's more than tripled the number of people who are asking to take the tour now. And long story short, I'm an author of several books. You mentioned one, thankfully. I appreciate that. But I called my publisher and said, how about a book by the name of From Television City in Hollywood?
Yes.
Secrets of the Studios or whatever, some subtitle. And he said, start writing. It's a deal.
That's amazing.
Yeah. So, I mean, on the strength of how many times in your life have you heard From Television City in Hollywood?
Yes.
And it's all the family and sitcoms in addition to the game shows, in addition to the soaps, in addition to the variety shows, Carol Burnett, all these shows together make for a hell of a book. And so I'm giving the tours and working on a book, and who knows, it may take a bigger life than that and end up being a documentary.
It should be. It really should be. And, when we say CBS, I mean, also programs, though, like from other networks, such as Three's Company, were recorded there as well. And I'm not only a fan, but I'm also a researcher for British television. Oh. So over in the UK, we have the BBC Television Centre, which isn't as old as Television City, but it was the same sort of idea of the factory sort of creation of television. And, I was thinking about it today as I knew that we're going to be talking tonight, is that this is not a disparagement about like how television is made today. I think that the fact is that if you can make something that looks like film and you have the technology and you could do it cheap enough, I think that there's something great there. But there really is something about programs like All in the Family and Three's Company and everything that's recorded to 2-inch videotape that is all studio bound, and it's multi-camera setup. And I used to know one of the folks that worked on. He used to be one of the editors for All in the Family, and talking about how you would edit on 2-inch videotape using basically data cards and stuff, and punch cards, I should say, to get your shots and stuff. This is a piece, I mean, for you to do something like that, I think is a piece of television history that we are moving further and further away from that really does need to be documented.
I totally agree. I mean, the television that we all grew up with, no matter what your age, we all grew up with television. Maybe it's the 50s, 70s, 90s, whatever. But it's our cultural, it's a tapestry of our culture. It's American culture that we all relate to. The things that came across that tube in our living room combines us all. You talk about Archie Bunker. We all know what you're talking about, even if you didn't live in the 70s, because all these things now have a life in reruns and streaming. And more than anything else I think you can talk about, you talk about The Price is Right. Everybody in the world has seen it.
Absolutely.
And, so it's important stuff as far as our generations or our centuries culture. In the Renaissance, it was about painting. That was the medium, but if you get to modern times, it's television more than anything else. And yes, I'm a firm believer in the preservation of the programming, and in this case, a little respect and preservation of the studios.
Absolutely. In the comments, Tracy says, been there lots of times to watch things being taped. It's a wonderful place. Yeah, I mean, it sounds, and I mean, you could just go on to YouTube, and there's this wonderful video of, I think it might have been, I don't remember exactly what anniversary, I think, of CBS, but it was all these stars that are lined up outside of Television City. You know what I'm obviously know what I'm talking about.
They're lined up alphabetically backwards, in case you hadn't noticed. I wondered, why is this person standing next to that? It's all alphabetical,
right?
Which is the only way to deal with people's egos. Why am I not here?
And it's such a wonderful piece. And one other question I have, because in the next segment I want to get to the book, the TV Inside Out book, I should say. But I saw a picture of you on the Randy West appreciation page with the big tally sign from Family Feud, the electronic board. What was that? Because I don't remember reading the description. I saw it and was just in awe of it. Was that from Ray Combs' version of the program?
Yes.
Did I read? Okay.
It's the Ray Combs version because the Ray Combs version's board was faster than the Richard Dawson era. The technology had advanced. But for those who don't know what we're talking about, just that big blackboard with the yellow dots on it that was played in the fast money round.
Yep.
Name a day of the week that you rest a lot, whatever. Sunday, survey said, Sunday, and how many people said it, so these words would come up. And the reason, it was $250,000 sign back in the 70s. And the reason it was so expensive is those were all handmade. It was huge in size and was the only way. Think about this now. Mark Goodson was a stickler for not getting caught up in any of the quiz show scandals. So the only way that you could not anticipate what was being said and deal with whatever a person said. If you used art cards, it wouldn't look good. If you tried to anticipate, you'd never get all the answers. So a way that you could program a readout that would instantly be able to reveal something that had just been said seconds previously, that was the only way to go about it with any elegance, class, showbiz, and pizzazz, and huge, bigger than life kind of thing. So yes, I ended up with that board.
So you own it?
I owned it. I owned it for
wow.
15 years. Had it in my living room. Had it in my garage. Had it in the attic. Had it in the basement. Had it in storage. And when the game show archives, which we can talk about if you like, the new National Archives of Television Game Shows began to collect materials for their exhibit, I was thrilled to have it find a home. I was going to keep it forever just because it's such an iconic piece. My God.
Yeah.
To throw that away, so much stuff gets thrown away that this needed to be saved. So, yes, I donated it to the museum, and it's working in tip-top shape and will be part of an exhibit that opens in about, a year and a half. And people will go to the archives and be able to do research, with old scripts and written materials and photographs. But for folks who just want to have a good time, the Price is Right big wheel. The CBS always had a backup in the basement for the wheel in case something broke. And for 30 whatever years, it never broke. So when they moved from CBS Television City, what do we do with this wheel? Well, there's no sense paying storage at another place for it. Let's just find a home for it. So the big wheel is there. The earlier letter puzzle board from Wheel of Fortune is there also. Nice. Many other items like that, along with the Family Feud that I was able to bring them. So it's going to be a hell of an exhibit.
It's going to be. And I want to take a break here in a second, but I do want to say there's something really wonderful about maybe even not even giving. I mean, when I would watch those, and I remember watching those on daytime when they aired originally with Ray Combs. I think Ray Combs truly, still to this day, when I see Ray Combs' Family Feud, my heart sinks a little bit. I adored him. But you never really think about what happened to that board. But then I see the picture of it, and immediately I just feel good. I just it is nice. Like you said, so much stuff gets thrown out. Something like that it's wonderful to see that it does exist. And to your point, it works in tip-top shape.
Yeah. It's beautiful.
It
really is.
Why don't we do this? Let's go ahead. Let's take our first break. When we come back, I want to get into this book here, TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies. This is the backstage, blunders, bloopers, and blasphemy of celebrities in search of success. This is great. I'm really looking forward to this. Our guest tonight is Randy West. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. And welcome back to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. My name is Greg Bach, and before we get back to Randy, I just want to say that Twin Cities Con is happening November 8th through 10th, and we have a table there this weekend, so we really would love it if you could stop by and say hi. Adam is going to be out there with me as well, and we're going to have a great time out there. And your wife is going to meet some Star Wars folks, huh?
Yeah, she's really excited to meet Anakin. She's not going to bring any sand or talk about having the high ground.
Good.
And then, of course, she wants to meet the Emperor. Me, personally, I'm going to see if I can pay Sting to throw you through a table.
Wow, okay. I'd prefer a windshield.
You know what? That could happen.
That
could happen. I've seen a number of his WCW matches. That could definitely happen.
Let's do it. All right. That sounds like fun. You know, it's funny. I'm thinking we're all joking. I say, let's do it. And then the next thing I know, there's like a 79 Cadillac outside right by the table, and you have everything all set up. So.
You're right. I've been watching wrestling for 40 years. I know how to set this up.
No, I bet you do. All right. Well, before I get killed, let's go back to our guest. Randy West is joining us tonight, who has been on part of television, part of Hollywood for many, many years, and I mean that in a good many, not your old many. Let's just be very clear about it. How long have you been working in the industry, as they say?
Well, it all started for me meeting Johnny Olson, who was the great announcer who first did "Come On Down."
Right.
He started that in '72, but he was a television announcer even before that. And as a kid, I used to cut classes in New York and take the subway to 30 Rock, where NBC was, and I'd watch him do what he does, which is a great audience warm up, get people in a great mood, and read copy like nobody's business. He could, read reams and reams of paper without making a mistake. It was incredible. And he encouraged me to get into radio because that was the entry point for broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And I did all that. So I was in radio in 72, and he came out that same year to CBS Television City in Hollywood, speaking of. Yeah. And I came out in radio after going station to station to station to station, as we all do on the way up. I finally went to Los Angeles, Power 106, and there was Johnny again. And he said, "Hey, you really did come up the ranks in radio, and you still want to do what I do?" I said, "More than anything." And he coached me and helped me and mentored me. Never got me a job, but my first job came about 1989, announcing Our Magazine with Gary Collins.
Oh, yeah.
In 1989, I guess that was. Yeah. And, one show after another, ending with The Price is Right, Johnny's show, working with Bob Barker. And working over the years with, dozens of these guys. Ray Combs, you mentioned, Dick Clark, Chuck Woolery, Bob Eubanks, Wink Martindale. Apparently, I can't keep a job. No, I went from one show to the next to the next. So the long answer to your short question is I was doing television starting in '89 and still working it. Next week, actually it's the week after, is the 11th annual Reality TV Awards, which is what it sounds like, 35 different categories of awards to reality TV things, shows, people. And I'll be doing that, accepting the award, that whole announcing thing like you do on award shows. And I had done that for Kids' Choice Awards. I did it for the Daytime Emmys. So that, along with game shows, is right up my alley.
That's fantastic, and congratulations on that longevity there. And I do want to talk about your book before I move on. Though I have to say, when you're talking about Johnny Olson, you've written a book about Johnny Olson as well, and his picture is on the cover of it. But I just think to myself, I don't need his face is forever with me. Watching Price is Right as a child, and still think of, to be perfectly honest, Rod Rodney and everyone who's come after as new compared to him. You know what I mean? Because he just was such a he. You're right. It's when you say Johnny Olson's show. I would agree with that, and that's no disrespect to anyone else because everyone has been very good on it. Yeah. But it was Johnny Olson for sure.
Well, when the show started, that whole "come on down" thing wasn't what it became until he started to make that happen. The show started with Mary Smith, stand up. Yeah. So-and-so, stand up, come on down, you're all the... And he was the one that turned that, come on down, that exciting call. And I'll tell you a secret that... is how he ended up getting much camera time. You remember seeing him as a kid, where you don't generally see the announcer on most of these shows. And that came to be because when Bob Barker got the gig, he went home. His mother was living in a guest house, I guess you would call it. And they would have dinner together, whatever. And she said, "How's that show going to CBS? When does that start?" "Well, I just met so-and-so today, and we're going to be starting it September 4th. And they just told me who the announcer is going to be. It's a guy named Johnny Olson." Now, Bob Barker's mother said, "Johnny Olson?" And Bob said, "Well, what's your relation to Johnny Olson?" She said, "When I was... God, it had to be 1940-something. I saw Johnny Olson host Ladies Be Seated, which was a radio show, and I was in the audience for that, and I thought he was just the most wonderful broadcast personality I'd ever met. And I followed his career when he went from radio show to radio show. And I know he did What's My Line television, and I've Got a Secret, and all these shows. And Bob Barker was amazed that his mother knew Johnny Olson so intimately, as far as, watching him and being a fan. So when they ended up together, Bob used to give Johnny all this camera time because he had such respect for Johnny, based on his mother's love, if you will, from afar, of course, of Johnny as a broadcaster.
Like a fan, literally a fanatic for Johnny Olson. That's fantastic. Right. The book that we're going to be talking a little bit about that came out in 2022, TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies, the backstage blunders, bloopers, and blasphemy of celebrities in search of success. You can get it on Amazon, but if we go through your website, you can also get inscription as well, right?
Yeah, I'll autograph it, to my best friend Greg, or, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, hope you love the shows, whatever you want said. And that's something you can do only, obviously, you can't go to the Amazon. I'm not going down there to sign books. But TVRandyWest.com is where we can get together on that, TVRandyWest.com. And actually, I'm offering the hardcover at a price lower than Amazon's.
Oh,
so
nice.
There you go.
Yeah, I've been meaning to get this. I meant to get it after I had you on the Matt McNeil show. But I have to ask, I see all these celebrities on the cover, and you talk about feuds and all this stuff. What did Gavin MacLeod do to be on the cover of all people? To see Gavin MacLeod on the cover of this book about feuds and bloopers and blasphemy of, always see Murray from the Mary Tyler Moore Show, Captain Steubing. What did he do?
Well, go one show earlier than that, and he was on McHale's Navy.
Oh, yeah.
And he wanted off of McHale's Navy in the worst way. He hated the gig, hated being part of this ensemble, hated not having more than a line or two because there were 12 different lead characters in this thing behind Ernest Borgnine and Tim Conway. I'm getting no exposure here. I'm doing absolutely nothing. I smile. I have one line. I want off the show. And they said, well, you're not getting off the show. And there was a universal disagreement. And he became so upset with this thing that he had to turn down another gig for this stupid McHale's Navy in his mind. I thought it was a great show. That he actually started drinking over it and found himself on Mulholland Drive one night wanting to drive off the cliff. Mulholland is that high road that's just very treacherous. And he stopped at a friend's house who lived up in that area, and he said, you got to let me in. It was like 11 o'clock at night. He said, you've been drinking, haven't you? He says, but worse than that, I just don't. I'm tired of this town. I'm tired of life. I'm tired of everything. And his friend took him in and spent the night talking with him and set him up with his shrink. And then he went to Universal and said, I can't deal with this anymore. I'm drinking. I'm suicidal. I'm very upset. I'm seeing a shrink. You have to let me off the show. And they did at that point. But he had reached a personal bottom,
Wow.
Which was really affected him deeply, and to the point where he was suicidal and needed an intervention of sorts. So, again, it's when celebrities go off the rails. That's, I think, is the through line of the book. The feuds and the difficulties that people have. And here's where it all comes from. And it's not just a storytelling of, like a National Enquirer, this happened to that guy thing. What it really is the following. If I suggested to you, how would you like to be a success? Yes. And I would say to you, well, what is a success? Most people's default setting is I want a lot of money and I want fame. I want fame and money. That's default. That makes most people think they're going to be happy. But television can, first of all, make you famous and rich faster than just about anything else in the world. And what happens when you're famous and rich and you're more miserable than you were before? Because making you famous and making you rich really doesn't make you happy.
No.
If you're unhappy, you can always, there's life affirmment in the idea that if I only got this, if I only got that, it spurs you on. But once you get everything you think you want, and you're still not happy, that's when you go off the rails. And that's when people really are depressed and start drinking or drugging or sexing or whatever it is they're doing, and making miserable time for everybody else on the set, because they're more miserable than ever, because now they realize the folly of there's nothing that will make me happy where my head is at now.
100%. And then also the fact, too, that as you know, it's always been around that Hollywood, chews up and spits out people if they're not careful. I mean, I would have to think to a certain degree, you must have had to deal with that to a certain extent in your career. Maybe it didn't get to that extent, I'm sure, but to the point of like, what's the point of being here? Did you ever get to anywhere like that?
Well, between gigs, I wonder, did I make the right choice of careers? And what am I doing in this town? I'm a tiny, fish in the ocean, and what I do for a living is stupid. I mean, I was at one point in my career, like, what am I doing? I'm reading aloud, and I'm telling jokes to 300 people, and it's all meaningless because an hour later we all go home, and what the hell did I accomplish?
Yeah,
I didn't save any lives. I didn't, I haven't done anything of meaning or tangible. And then I met a guy on a set, and he said, "You don't understand, Randy. In that audience of 330 people at The Price is Right, do you know that probably 5, 6 of them have cancer? There's another 8 or 9 who are dealing with a loved one who's perhaps very ill. There are people who are out of work. There are people who don't know where their next rent check is going to come from. And you can take them away from that for an hour or two. That's a gift."
Yeah,
I can. People, so many people, and more so now than any other time, I think, in our lives. People can't make ends meet. Rent is high. Owning a home is impossible, and all that's going on in the world now, political and otherwise. It's a tough time to be alive. And wow, if you could take somebody away from that for an hour or two, that's a noble profession, for lack of another way of putting it. And that turned my head around. It's like, wait, I'm actually doing something that's of value. I'm not changing lives, but I'm making people happy and taking them away from their problems and providing entertainment for the folks in the studio and obviously for the folks at home who are watching, addicted to The Price is Right and all these other shows. We love these shows, and they take us away from our problems. And that was my moment of realizing this is a noble profession, and took me out of that realm of what am I doing here and what's my point? I didn't have that to worry about. And of course, achieving the goal, which was to do The Price is Right, the show that Johnny Olson, my mentor, left his mark doing. If I could only stand in those footsteps, I couldn't fill his shoes ever, but I could stand in that footsteps, stand where he was, and live in his dressing room and all that. That was it. That was the highest goal I ever had. And people generally say, well, gee, you're an announcer. Don't you want to be a host? No. Why not? I've seen hosts never work again because 3 shows in a row fail. Yeah. And I won't name names and embarrass people, but you've seen people hosting television shows who just disappear forever.
Yeah.
And as the announcer, that never happens. So no, I kept to my goals and never looked to reach beyond my grasp.
Well, and it's interesting because your goals are different than Gavin MacLeod. I bet you didn't expect that sentence to be said tonight, But it's true though, where it's like a lot of people. I mean, and that we're going into different areas. I get that. An actor, they want to be seen, they want to be heard, all this stuff. And your goals weren't quite that way. And, I want to go to break in a second here, but I do want to ask you that first day that you actually were able to be like, I am announcing The Price is Right. I made that part of my goal. What was that day like?
It was an amazing day because I was there to do a week of shows as a test, as an audition, so to speak. And I learned the business from Johnny Olson. So what I did naturally was to get off the stage and get down with the people in the audience like he did during the warm-up I'm talking about, and touched them on the shoulder. Hey, how you doing? Thanks for coming today. And, oh, look at you. You're looking good. And look at that flowered dress. How often do you have to water that dress, that floral? Doing silly jokes and having laughs with people. And there was Roger Dofkowitz, producer of the show, watching from the stage. And I'm thinking, well, that's great. He's sizing me up and I'm doing well. And then I turn around and there's two more people standing with Roger. And I continue to do my 22 minutes. And now there's 5 people up there. And I'm thinking to myself, what might I have said to, oh my God, why are these people looking at me? Something must have flown out of my mouth in the moment of ad-libbing. Oh my God, what did I do? And of course, you can't stop and tell the audience, hey, sit tight for a minute. I'm going to go talk to the producer. Yeah. So the warm-up goes directly into the show, and you do an hour, and then you wrap up with say goodnight to Bob, and you pull the door prize. So it's an hour and 20 minutes later. I finally go up to Roger, and I say, well, you guys were looking at me. I must owe you an apology because other people have work to do. I don't know why you'd all stop and be looking at me unless I did something really terrible. And he said the following: no, Randy, you don't understand. Everybody came over, and we agreed that you were channeling Johnny. In other words, that what I was doing was inspired by, and so obviously in the spirit of Johnny, not his jokes, because 30 years between us.
Yeah.
But working from the audience, where Roddy always remained on the stage, didn't go down into the pit with the people. So what I was doing was reminiscent and held my own, I guess, in their minds. I was channeling Johnny, the supreme compliment. So that was the first day of The Price is Right.
I was going to say, there probably couldn't be any higher compliment than that.
Exactly.
Very, very good. Let's take our next break here. When we come back, let's talk more about the book. Let's talk more Randy. If you have any questions for Randy, put them in the comments, and we'll keep this going. I love this. Thank you, Randy, for joining us here, and we'll be right back. You're listening to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. And welcome back to GhostBox Radio on AM 950. My name is Greg Bakken. Tomorrow, we are going to, if you're able to, check out GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakken on Facebook. We're going to do our weekly panel show, Myth or Mystery, to the point that we're even going to have Mr. Adam joining us, doing the tech analysis.
Yeah, you guys are really slumming for tech analysis, aren't you, at this point, if you're asking me? Because technically that's 2 out of the last 3 weeks, so I appreciate that.
You're very welcome.
Thank you so much.
That is going to be tomorrow at 9 p.m. on GhostBox Radio with Greg Bakken on Facebook. We are talking with Mr. Randy West. His book is one of his books, TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies, the backstage blunder, bloopers, and blasphemy of celebrities in search of success. Once again, Randy, thank you so much for titling the book in a way that I cannot read it without screwing it up every single time.
It's like it's an announcer's test.
Well, and I failed. So, and I remember one of the things that you'd said last time you're on, that, you have to portray a very smooth announcing to the audience, like you're just reading, like I'm talking to you now, very smooth. Meanwhile, you have so many people talking to you about stuff that you have to do and maybe changes in what you've all talked about and trying to keep up with everything. And I helped out yesterday. Adam and I both helped out with election coverage, and I was manning Election Central, meaning I was giving all the returns and stuff. And Chad, who owns the station, was sitting next to me, and something happened. Something paranormal might have happened in the room. A light turns on by itself. I'm about to go live to give results. Chad is trying to tell me what's happening when I'm going live, not even to do with the broadcast. And it just threw me off. And you came to mind immediately as, my gosh, I can't even do it when one person says one sentence to me, trying to talk to me, and you have like multiple people talking to you, don't you, about like all sorts of things.
It's quite amazing. The job is concentration more than anything else, because you're on a headset with all the other folks, meaning the director and AD, assistant director, are giving instructions to start naming people. The announcer, the stage manager, lighting, audio, everybody's on the same PL, meaning private line, or the same audio. So while I'm reading it might sound like this. Stand by, announce, stand by, music, and in 5, 4, 3, cue music, cue announce. And then you start reading as camera 1, tighten up 2, take 2, ready 1, roll 1, a roll tape, VTR 1, and bring it up. It just goes on and on. Lighting is screaming, all this stuff. Everybody's listening for their thing and tuning out what's not relevant. But while which isn't difficult, you're hearing all this stuff. But if you're talking and reading at the same time, and all this, listening for announce, or if you've done the show a long time, they call you Randy, and it might be, lighting, roll VTR, a faster Randy, and light, cue, music, ready to, no, Randy, faster, or whatever it is they're trying to tell you. And my God, it's crazy making. And the one that everybody's surprised to hear is when you read those, Lee press-on nails, beautify active hands instantly with Lee press-on nails. What about loose dentures? Orifix holds them tight day and night. Well, those are paid announcements, obviously, commercials, And if you go more than a certain number of seconds, the network is on your case because it's over commercialization. If you go under a certain amount of time, the sponsor isn't getting what they paid for. So when I'm reading those, what I'm hearing in my headset is 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, and I'm trying to get the copy to beautify active hands instantly, press on nail 0, 7, worried about loose dentures 6, 5, 4. So I mean, it's just a cacophony of sounds directed at other people and myself that makes the job a great adrenaline rush. When you do it the first time, you're out of your mind and you're going to screw up. But eventually it becomes like, this is exciting. It's like blood flow. It's like, wow, I'm alive. It's like working the trapeze in a circus without a net.
Do you run into situations after, say, Lee Press on Nails have been running the same copy for 2 years, and even though you're going through the script and whatnot prior to the show, that Lee Press on Nails suddenly have changed, even might be just like a line? Does that really throw you off after doing it for so long, or do you can just do it?
I'm always reading, even when I think I know what's coming up.
Sure,
I'll read it off the page.
Just safe.
And Johnny Olson taught me in the book that is about Johnny Olson, called Johnny Olson: A Voice in Time. I had to negotiate with Fremantle to include a copy of his script from a Price is Right showcase. And on it is all these markings. It looks like, what the hell is, all these lines and dashes and circles and arrows and all this nonsense. And he taught me this system that he created that makes it easy to not screw up. It's like music. Mozart wrote music, and years later, if you know music, you can read it and play it the way Mozart intended it, because then the quarter notes and all the other, pianissimo and whatever. And if you mark the copy that way, it's easy to rely on it, even easier than coming from memorization. So I'm always looking at the page, even if I think I know it, because the page directs me into how it is that I hear it in my head and how I want to deliver it.
Script is supreme.
Yeah,
absolutely. The book we're talking about today, out of other books that Randy has written, TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies, the backstage blunders, bloopers, and blasphemy of celebrity in search of success. And I still didn't get it right. I see, and I think I know what we're talking about here when I see Bob Barker with the Barker's Beauties on the cover as well.
Well, yes, you can finish that on your own. There's a certain number of stories there about Diane Parkinson having sex and with Bob, because they were, as he said, two middle-aged adults consenting.
Yep.
And she didn't like being called middle-aged, but that's okay. And Holly Hallstrom was dismissed. And of all the people who were fired from The Price is Right, and there were many over the years, it's only Holly who didn't sign a non-disclosure. And she had to hold out for a long period of time to get a settlement in which she did not have to sign the non-disclosure. And therefore, she talks about it, and therefore I talk about it.
Yeah.
And she filled me in on all of it. And the stories go, from David Letterman and a $2 million extortion plot against him to Vivian Vance and William Frawley, who hated each other during I Love Lucy. But the hate was such that when they each went on to their next show, listen to this now, Vivian Vance went on to Lucy's next show, And Frawley was on My Three Sons as his next show, and they both happened to tape at the same lot. And when Frawley would be through with his liquid lunch and the kids they sent with him to bring him back to the stage on time, he would stop at Lucy's show, wait for Vivian, open the door and eavesdrop on a take. If they're not shooting something, he would just stand there until the tape is rolling and they're in the scene and in the action. And the minute Vivian would start to talk, he would throw film cans, because those shows were on film in those days, big 35 millimeter metal film cans up into the air, and they would crash down to the floor like cymbals, in a drum set. And she would scream, "Frawley!" And he would laugh and then go on to his set. So they hated each other such that it went on and on past I Love Lucy.
Well, and that had been at the Desilu Studios then that they shot. Yeah, and I find it interesting too because after I Love Lucy, there's at least two others in the 60s going to 70s. Here's Lucy, I'm Lucy, you're Lucy. I don't even know.
We used to be Lucy. I want to be Lucy.
Yeah,
Lucy
I want to be. But Frawley was one of his later in his career. He just had a cameo, doesn't he? Or he's a small role in one of the episodes where he is where she makes this sort of the off comment he looks familiar or something like that.
Yeah,
it was a stable person or something, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, he was high ratings. He was family after all those years together. She hated him, but Desi loved him.
Yes.
And Lucy liked him. So why not? Let's bring him on. It's a great cameo. The audience would go nuts.
And they, what I always understood that they always made, in his contract, always made time for him to go, to watch the Dodgers.
It was the Yankees.
It was the Yankees. And as long as he stayed sober.
Yeah, he had to stay sober. And if the Yankees were in the World Series, he had time off to go to New York and watch the series.
That's incredible.
And that happened. It's, you sign a contract. I had to think of what are the odds the Yankees are going to be in the series, and they were. And there were episodes without him.
That's incredible. What a great. And once again, this isn't what I like about this. This isn't salacious. This is stuff like you just said about the Price is Right stuff. Holly talked about it, therefore you could talk about it. It's not trying to, like you said, not National Enquirer. And sometimes I see people well, who cares about that? Who cares what's happening in people's personal life? You know what? It's interesting. It's interesting to see how people, and it doesn't. I don't read that and think, oh my gosh, I'm never going to watch I Love Lucy again because they sounded horrible. No, it's just another added ingredient to a program that's 70 years old now, and it's part of the tapestry of what that program is. And same with I just remember that all that stuff happening with Price is Right with Bob Barker and him being very forthright about the situation. And I grew up with Catholic parents, so they're all just oh no, we don't do that. But I just think to myself, his popularity has never waned. He was always, people were able to understand where he was coming from with the death of his wife, and like you said, two adults having a consensual relationship.
Yeah, and I think it adds to our understanding of the things that we're watching, not salaciously, but how did this contract come to be? Why is this guy on this show?
Yep.
How did this happen? Who are these people? Where do they meet? And what's happening between episodes and in these people's lives? Since we're so involved and invested in the shows, I think most people like to know what went on behind the curtain. Again, not who's sleeping with who, but more interestingly about the workings of the business.
I agree. And we have about just less than 2 minutes left. And I do think that one of the important things about this book, and we talked about it just with Television City as well, is the fact that this is a history of television, and the ethereal bit around it as well. It's important. It's important to document this stuff. And I really, and same with your book regarding Johnny Olson. Only you could write that book about Johnny Olson. Do you feel that way?
Well, I know it because when he passed away and then his wife was going to a nursing home, I was entrusted with everything he saved. He had saved a letter for me, and I got a phone call from Penny Olson, wife's cousin, nephew, actually, pardon me, who said, "Are you the Randy West who we were looking for? You're the Randy who corresponded with John?" Yeah. Well, we have some stuff here that he saved over his 58-year career. Would you like it? And of course, when the material came to me, there was a outline for an autobiography he was writing. Oh. So I'm the only one who could write this because it was his writing in a great part, because he'd written a couple chapters and had an outline. So that's what I worked for him, in addition to adding the stories that he liked most to tell about his career and the people he worked with, Frank Sinatra and everybody you could name.
So you took on his personal archive, and you very much heir apparent in the situation and just in your career in general, it seems like.
It seems that way, and there could be no higher praise and no greater level of success in my own mind to follow his footsteps.
Once again, the book is called TV Inside Out, Flukes, Flakes, Feuds, and Felonies, the backstage blunders, bloopers, and blasphemy of celebrities in search of success. What we had just talked about right before that as well is the Johnny Olson book, which I'm trying to get to that page, and I can't. Randy, the name of the book for Johnny Olson again is, please?
Johnny Olson, A Voice in Time.
And these are available on Amazon. But if you go over to TVRandyWest.com, TVRandyWest.com. You can get these books. You can get them signed and scripted, all this stuff. I just want to say real fast, Randy, you mentioned it earlier, and I want to say this. I needed this conversation today. I needed a nice, fun conversation, and you gave that to me. And I hope you gave that to a lot of other people, because this is what I needed. Thank you, Randy, so much.
My pleasure. I really appreciate your inviting me. It's a good time.
Thank you very much. And folks, don't forget, Adam and I will be at Twin Cities Con on Friday. Everyone, have a good Wednesday night.